Last night, we did not hear a rebuttal. We heard a clash of realities. The president stood before the country and projected strength. He said America is on the rise. He said his policies are restoring power. He framed tariffs as leverage. He framed immigration enforcement as protection. He spoke with confidence and certainty. Then she stood up and painted a different picture. She said families are stretched. She said costs are rising because of policies he made. She said enforcement is creating fear. She did not speak in dominance. She spoke in warning. So the real contrast is not just party versus party. It's about tone versus consequence. It's about strength versus strain. Now let's look at the major difference.
Because since this president took office last year, his reckless trade policies have forced American families to pay more than $1,700 each in tariff costs. Small businesses have suffered, farmers have suffered, some losing entire markets. Everyday Americans are paying the price.
That right there is the economic contrast in plain English. President frames tariffs as power. He says they protect American workers. He says they give the United States leverage. In his version, tariffs are tools of strength, short-term pressure for long-term gain. She reframed that as a cost. Tariffs are a cost. Tariffs are a tax, a direct cost. She said families are paying $1,700 more. That's not abstract. That's personal. That's grocery bills. That's building materials. That's everyday life. He says the pain builds national power. She says the pain is already hurting the families. This is the fundamental difference. But here's the question voters quietly ask after the applause goes away. If tariffs are hurting families, what replaces them? Lower them across the board? Renegotiate trade deals? Subsidize domestic production differently? Change energy policy to offset costs? Because describing the cost is powerful. It lands everywhere. But lowering costs requires mechanics. It requires a step-by-step alternative. The president offered confidence. She offered concern. Confidence makes supporters feel secure. Concern makes frustrated voters feel heard. But independents are asking something else. Who actually lowers my bills? Now let's look at the second major contrast between the two speeches last night.
And they have done it without a warrant. They have ripped nursing mothers away from their babies. They have sent children, a little boy in a blue bunny hat, children to far-off detention centers, and they have killed American citizens in our streets. And they have done it all with their faces masked from accountability.
This is where the emotional line is drawn. The president frames immigration enforcement as safety. He says stronger borders protect citizens. He says order prevents chaos. In his speech, enforcement equals security. She reframed it, enforcement as fear. She used imagery. Nursing mothers separated, a little boy in a blue hat, masked agents. She turned policy into a moral question. He says we're securing the borders. She says, at what cost? That is not a small difference. That is two completely different philosophies of strength. But again, here's where the contrast gets tested. If enforcement is being done wrong, what does secure and humane look like in practice? More immigration judges, faster asylum processing, different detention standards, new border policy? What changes on day one? Because saying something feels harsh does not automatically build a workable system. Voters want more than emotional contrast. They want operational clarity. And that is the tension in this rebuttal. The president's speech was built on dominance. He spoke as if control equals success. He presented America as strong because of his decisions. Her speech was built on accountability. She questioned the cost. She questioned the methods. She questioned whether strength without limits becomes overreach. One said America is rising because of force. The other said America is straining because of force. That is the real difference. Now, here is how this likely will land. If you're frustrated about prices, her affordability message probably resonates with you. It felt like somebody was naming your experience. If you're concerned about border security and believe enforcement restores order, the president's framing likely felt necessary. If you are in the middle, you likely saw pieces of truth in both speeches and also felt a tension between them. And here's where this gets serious. A contrast in tone is not the same as contrast in execution. She clearly positions herself as the alternative choice. She challenged the narrative. She questioned the impact, but the burden of contrast is heavy. To truly stand apart, she has to go beyond saying this is hurting people. She has to say, here's exactly how I, as a Democrat, would fix it. Energy without a roadmap fades. Critique without structure does not lower housing prices. Emotional imagery does not automatically reform immigration policy. The president presented strength as a solution. The Democrats presented accountability as a solution. Now the country has to decide which one feels closer to results. Because in the end, voters do not choose between who sounds more forceful. They choose between who they believe can actually change their daily lives. If she wants to be the true contrast, she has to move from warning to blueprint, from concern to concrete steps, from moral critique to measurable outcomes. Until that bridge is fully built, the debate remains narrative versus narrative. And Americans are waiting for something more tangible than that. And that is the contrast, and that is the test for the Democrats.